Hello, welcome to Angular Air. This is the first episode with our brand new panel. We're really excited to have the panel to help improve the future shows that we have. And let's go ahead. I'll introduce you to our new panel, and everybody can say a quick hi. I'll give a couple announcements, and then we'll get into our show. So first we have Olivier Combe.
Hi.
Is that right? Did I say your name right? Is it Combe?
No.
Is it Combe?
Okay, listen carefully. It's Olivier Combe.
Olivier Combe.
Yeah.
Okay. I got this. Okay, so then we have Kara Erickson.
Hello.
Aimee Knight.
Hello.
And Scott Moss.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
And Todd couldn't make it to the show today, but he is also a panelist, Todd Motto. And Pascal Precht.
Hello there. Also wrong, by the way.
Oh man, I'm so bad. I practice for the show. And Carmen Popoviciu.
There we go. Oh, that was good. That was good.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
And then, as always, I'm your host, Kent C. Dodds, and love you guys. This is great. So, before we get into our actual show, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick announcements. First off, so Google Moderator, which is the tool that we used for question and answer for our shows previously, it's getting end of life. Google just decided that we're not important enough, I guess. Sad day, but. So we're no longer using that. We're transitioning to the Q&A app in Hangouts, which hopefully will just be a better experience anyway. So the problem with the
until they get rid of that.
Yeah, right. So hopefully they keep this, but so you can only ask your questions live. So if you're watching live. Through the Hangouts app. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to ask a question, I'm pretty sure you have to just go to the Hangout on Google+. But if you want to ask questions before a show, then you can just post them in the comments of the event. And I think unless we get like tons and tons of questions, that should be just fine. So so that's a quick announcements there. And then we also our next show is next week on April 28th, same time, same place. And we're going to be joined by Jeff Welpley, Patrick Stapleton, and Rob Wormold about Angular 2 Alpha. And I don't know if you played around with Angular 2, but it is awesome. And so, we're going to have a good time next week talking with some of the guys who've done a lot of work with Angular 2 already. And these are just community members. They're not members of the Angular core team. So it'll be a good show. And then, as always, follow us on Google+ and Twitter to keep up to date with the latest shows. And our website is ng-air.github.io. And that's our announcement. So let's go ahead and get into the main content of our show today. So this show is simply to introduce our viewers to the panel. And so we get to know those awesome developers who are going to be on our shows in the future. And also, we're going to be talking about some Angular horror stories and pro tips. So that should be kind of fun from these awesome community members who have probably some interesting horror stories and pro tips. So great. So just by way of introduction, we'll start off with Pascal. So if everybody's going to just talk about like where you live, where you work, what you do, and how the community might know you. How you got into software development and Angular and that kind of thing. So take it away, Pascal.
Okay, so hi there. So my name is Pascal Precht, by the way, and I live in Hanover, Germany, and I work at a company, a startup in Hanover, and I run my own company called ThoughtRam. We run workshops and write articles about Angular and Git. And the community might know me from the Angular Translate project, which enables internationalization for Angular applications. And how long have I been doing software development? I think it's now since around 7 or 8 years or something. So I first made an apprenticeship here in Germany, and then I jumped right into a proper job, and then the next job, and now I'm currently doing my current job, and yeah. And I think like a bit over 3 years ago, I stumbled upon Angular JS and started working with it and playing around with it, and also introduced it at the company where I was working for. And I used it in a couple of projects and built my own libraries and extensions. And yeah, so now I'm part of the community, and I'm very happy about it because it's a very nice community. And yeah, that's actually pretty much it. I don't really have any Angular horror stories to tell. But
we'll cover the horror stories and pro tips after everybody's introduced themselves. So
okay,
you have a little bit of time to think about it if you want. So
awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Pascal. So Carmen, why don't we go with you next?
Okay, sure. So, what was the first question?
So where do you live and where do you work?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I originally come from Romania. But I currently live in Amsterdam. I work at ING, at the bank. I'm part of a really cool team there called Fruit Loops. I started working with Angular around 3 years ago. I was at also at a startup, and one of my colleagues ran into Angular. And, well, we were looking for a solution on the front end, and then we said, okay, we should give it a try, and we did, and yeah, like everybody really liked it, so we went along with it. It was really cool. I think it was one of the best decisions anybody took that affected me in such a positive way. So yeah, I'm so grateful to Hugo, my colleague, who made this choice. I'm so happy. Like it changed my life. It made me love web development. It was really good. Yeah. Totally,
and it's not just the framework, right? It's the community that comes with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't even have words for the community itself. I don't know. It really makes me feel like it's a big family. There are so many awesome people. It's yeah. No words for that. It's really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Carmen. Scott, why don't we go with you next?
Yeah, thanks. I'll take it over. KCD or KCDD or is it KCDD or KCD?
KCD or you could KCDC is how Aaron Frost refers to me.
Oh, okay. So a little more about me. Currently, right now, I live in Oakland, California. I'm an engineer at Udacity down in Mountain View, and I've been working with Angular for the last almost 2 years now. I was teaching Angular exclusively at a Hack Director coding school where I designed the curriculum for Angular and taught it every 6 weeks to 60 engineers for an entire year. So I got pretty familiar with it, and we used it as our primary front-end framework internally. So that was pretty cool. So I've kind of fell in love with it. I learned Angular from one of the best people in the community, Ari Lerner. He was the guy who taught me Angular, so that was pretty sweet. Learned a lot from that guy, and did some work with him. Yeah, he is. And then I also learned a lot from Patrick JS, who's going to be on the show next week. I'm actually in New Jersey with him right now. We're doing some work together. So I've learned a lot from these guys, and I just fell in love with the framework. I guess the community can recognize me from I don't know. I guess if you went to Hack Director, you know me because you've used my animation library. I think it's one of the mainly used ones, or maybe from my talk at NGConf about Sasquatches. So that's me.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Scott. All right, let's go with Aimee.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Start off. I live right now in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm kind of new to here. Before that, I was in the South. I was in Nashville, and I went to a 6-month programming boot camp there.
Right now, I'm working in Baltimore at a company called Message Systems, and we're building a product called SparkPost, which is sort of like SendGrid. You can send emails through your application. We have a lot of really big clients like Facebook and Twitter and stuff use our software. I guess as far as community, I was recently on an episode of JavaScript Jabber, so I don't know if anyone listens to that. You might have heard my story there, and I guess you could say I'm kind of known as like the figure skater that went into software development. I'm not just a figure skater, but that was a really big part of it. Anyway, so that might ring a bell to some people. I have been programming for 2.5 years, like really only serious programming for about a year if you include the boot camp. And then I've been at my job for 8 months. And I got into Angular. I wanted to do Angular, which kind of helped me narrow down where I wanted to work because the place I work, our front end is all in Angular. So I've been doing Angular for 7-8 months off and on. I don't do just Angular. We do like full stack JavaScript here. So I do Node and Angular. So I have good tips and horror stories later on.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to your perspective since, like, I do all Angular pretty much almost all the time, and so yeah, having a perspective of somebody who doesn't use Angular all the time, that'll be awesome. And actually, I wanted to ask, so do you have any like of your competitions or anything from your figure skating life that like people could go watch?
Luckily, I had a different name back then, so you kind of have to dig, and I'm not sharing.
Oh, man. Okay.
No.
Nice.
It was a long time ago. I probably, like, you peak in that industry when you're, like, 15 or 16, so I was pretty young, and it was, like, before a lot of stuff was, you know, online and everything, so you'd have to dig.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's go with Olivier.
Okay. So, hi guys. My name is Olivier Combe, and I live in Lyon, in France. It's a small city, the second city in France, so not Paris, but it's nice here. And I work at a startup called DBI. We do business intelligence, which is a fancy name for data analytics and stuff like that. I've been doing Angular for like 3 years now, pretty long time. It started as an internal project at the firm I was working on at that time, and I really didn't like it. I didn't want it to continue using it because it was I found it maybe too bloated, but Angular was at version 1 something at the time, and it evolved. I came back to it like 6 months later, and I found it really awesome. So I started working with it, and I haven't stopped since. I've been doing software development for almost 10 years now. But I started working professionally 6 years ago, I think. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. How can you know me? I've been working on a lazy loading library named OC Lazy Load, and that's probably where you can know me from. And also Angular local forage, which is the Angular adapter for local forage.
Cool. Hey, you're making me feel like a total noob with your 10 program.
Well, you're younger than me.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Olivier. So, Kara, why don't we go with you? I think you're actually the last one. So.
So I'm Kara. I work at OpenTable on our restaurant products. So it's kind of not the consumer side that you would use to make reservations, but you know, front of house, inventory, that kind of thing. And those are all Angular applications. And recently I've been working on a library of UI components in Angular to use kind of across our different Angular applications. What else is there? Oh, I live in San Francisco. And I guess I've been doing Angular, well, I guess I started messing around with it about a year and a half ago, but only professionally when I started working at OpenTable, and that was about a year ago. So yeah, what else is there? I guess you'd know me from the NG-Conf talk that I did, and that's pretty much it.
It was an awesome talk. That's definitely a recommended one for sure. So, cool. All right, and I'll just introduce myself, I guess, really quick, because I don't know if I've answered all these questions on the show before. So, I live in Utah, in like the Salt Lake area. I currently work at a company called Alianza that totally rocks. We're voice over IP, and I am no longer the only UI developer here. We just hired somebody. I'm so happy about that.
Yay!
Yeah, it's great. He started yesterday, and yeah, good stuff. The community might know me from NG-Air and from Angular Formally. I'm the maintainer and owner of the Angular Formally library, and I do a couple other open source things. I really like being involved in that, and I'm on Twitter and stuff. So, and then I've been doing software development for like professionally for just a year. I just graduated from college a year ago, and then my first line of code was like that actually ran and stuff was written about almost 4 years ago. So yeah, I got into Angular about 2.5 years ago or so when I was working at Domo. Yeah, we migrated from Backbone to Angular, or we started. I think they're probably 50% done with that enormous app. So yeah, that was good experience there. And then yeah, totally love Angular. It's great. I'm super, super excited for Angular 2. Like, if you haven't tried it out, you got to, because it's so great. So, yeah. Anyway, that's me. That's everybody. And so let's go ahead and talk about some Angular horror stories. So I'll go ahead and just kick us off, just to get us in the mood of this spooky episode. So. How many of you guys have seen the dreaded a provider not found error?
Yep.
The worst.
Never.
If you're not familiar with that terrible error, it's generally you'll find that normally in production when it's hardest to debug stuff. But basically, you've minified your code, and because of the minification and you haven't like annotated your injectable functions properly, you're going to get this error that says, hey, I can't find the A provider because the minification changed your function parameter names to A, B, C. And that is such a pain. So I remember one time in particular, I was working with Dave Geddes at Domo, and he was dealing with this issue. And so I came over and we were looking at it. And what finally got us pointed in the right direction was we took, and at Domo, that app, it's 150,000 lines of JavaScript.
Wow.
That's not including like libraries and stuff. Like we were using Lodash and jQuery and Angular and Backbone and it's wild. So we took our built JavaScript file, which was huge, and we did a grep for it was this crazy grep, but we knew what our minifier was doing to our function, and so we had like this special grep pattern to find functions that may or may not be injectable, like minified injectable functions that didn't have the right annotation. And man, that was just such a pain. So beware. Make sure that you're annotating your functions properly, and yeah, because that was a pretty scary experience. So who would like to throw out another horror story?
Well, I have one, if you want.
Sure.
So 2 years ago, I think, I was a UI developer like you. So I was doing the animation on a side panel, just coming from the left, and the new ng animate stuff just was really brand new. I think it was still in beta or something, and I really wanted to use that. So I started doing the ng enter and stuff, and adding all the directives needed to animate my stuff, and it was really horrible. I had to work on this for like I don't know 2 days or something like that. The documentation was not really good, and in the end, it was like a bloated code with a lot of hooks and double bindings everywhere and stuff like that. And my menu wasn't even coming really nicely. We had yeah, it wasn't really good. So I said, screw it. I just do it with CSS animations, and I did it in like 2 hours. And so bottom line is, you may have tools to do a lot of stuff in Angular, but you don't necessarily have to use it. Sometimes you can just rely on good old plain JavaScript and CSS, and it will be really better.
I think that's a good pro tip you slid in there too. Yeah, that's good. Yep. Nice. Anybody else have a horror story they'd like to share?
I have a horror story.
All right.
I think Carmen is going to hate me for that. Sorry, Carmen. So as we said just recently, we gave a talk at this conference here in Lugano, and we spoke about Angular 2 and the main reasoning behind some design decisions, especially when it comes to the template syntax. So things like brackets and parentheses and everything. So there are really reasons behind it, and so we prepared this talk. We had a very nice slide deck and everything, and at some point we also needed to actually practice the talk, like going over it and thinking about who is going to talk about what, who's taking which part, and like we were both agreeing on, yeah, we don't want to make this, this kind of thing that one talker takes this part, the other one takes that part, and then we go back and forth like that. We rather with something like a casual discussion and everything. So it was really hard to practice that. And at some point, like three hours before our actual talk, we went back to the hotel room, and actually I tried to convince her that it makes sense to really try that out. And it didn't really work out so well, this kind of preparation. So we both tried to talk about the stuff we wanted to talk about at the conference, and we somehow failed. So like all of a sudden we didn't really know how to explain certain things, and then we also realized, hey, there are actually some things that are still unclear, and we actually have to find out what those are and why they are and everything. So there was a kind of horror story. I think that could have been better. A pro tip I can share, actually. Am I allowed to do that? I only have 10%.
Yeah,
but come on.
Your battery's going out.
Right.
But
so
now you're leaving everybody with the impression that it went really, really bad.
the talk was actually super good, from my perspective. Right, I should add that. So on stage, then, actually everything went out very well. So that was really weird. Like I was like totally stoked that it worked out so good. But maybe Carmen can talk on that a bit later. I really have to hurry up here because now I have 9% left. Oh. So my pro tip. My pro tip is for Angular developers. Go to the interwebs and try to find out what bind to controller means in the directive definition object, because it is a best practice to use something like controller S in Angular applications in order to always have a namespace in your view expressions. And so we want to use controller as syntax. We can also use controller as syntax in directives. So if this is a best practice, then also use controller as syntax for directives. And even one step further, use controllers instead of the link function if possible. So just get rid of link, get rid of compile if you don't need it. Like, just don't care about the confusing stuff. Just use the directive controller. It gets called before the link function. You have access to scope. You have access to element and everything. Those are local injectables. And then use bind to controller, and then just build directives with controllers, and don't try to confuse all those things. It's really easier to just have a directive that has a controller and a template, and that's it. It's more the Angular 2 way, I would say. That's my pro tip. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
it's too bad that Todd isn't here, because he wrote an article on this like yesterday, I think, saying that you should use Angular extend and not controller as.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I didn't read that article, but I saw it and I was kind of interested. So go Google that. Todd Motto. Yeah, I'm curious as to the reasoning behind that. But anyway, I think, Pascal, I think your horror story seems a lot like Angular 2 or part of that is Angular 2 is bleeding edge, and we're the ones bleeding when we're using it. Is that about the size of it?
Well, the actual horror story is, if you ever want to give a talk, prepare yourself.
Oh, come on, we also prepared. I don't fully agree with Pascal, because I think that we had so many trouble. It's not necessarily that things were not entirely clear to us, but it's because everything was really fresh. Like, we did a lot of reading for it, and he's been using it, and I wrote our demo app. But it was a lot of information in a rather short time. So then it's like, yeah, then it's a bit hard. Like, it doesn't have time to sink in. So it just needs a bit of time. So I think that's why we had troubles with it, because I was always like, yeah, I know this, but I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's clear for me, but how do I make it clear for others?
Maybe I should make clear that I really needed to find something to tell a horror story. That's the only thing that came to mind. The talk was awesome. The preparation went well. There was nothing going wrong. It's all good.
Cool. Does anyone else have any horror stories that you thought of or experienced with Angular?
I think I have one.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this was a while ago, so I'm trying to remember the exact details of it, but basically I was building this attribute directive to handle some modifiers that we were using for our CSS. And I got it working, everything was working fine, and I had named it a certain way. I think it was like GC modifier changer or something like that. And then we had an internal discussion, and we decided, hey, let's rename it core modifier changer, whatever it is. And suddenly nothing worked. And I couldn't figure it out. It was just a name change. So I spent maybe 8 hours, and this is just me being a moron, but I spent maybe 8 hours just changing the letters in the name one at a time. Okay, so if I change it to an E, it works. Great. Okay. But if I change it to a B, it doesn't work. Why? And then finally I figured out it was because of where I was using it, because it was an attribute directive, so it's being used in concert with element directives. So I was changing it from being alphabetically after the element directive to being alphabetically before the element directive, and there was no priority set, so it was just kind of running in whatever priority.
Oh my gosh.
So it turned out to be an alphabet issue.
So
hot tip. If you're building a directive that is meant to be used on the same element as other directives, make sure that you understand the priority that it needs to be run. Doesn't mean that it needs to be set necessarily, but if you're having issues with that, yeah, good place to look. So.
It looks like Pascal's got to jump out, so say goodbye, Captain Pascal.
Goodbye, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Kara, that is terrifying.
Hours.
I was thinking that you were going to say that, like, you forgot to change the camel case name of the directive or something.
Oh, that definitely happened too.
Yeah. Oh, man. Scary. Cool. Anybody else have horror stories?
I think I actually have two. Well, one is not such a big horror story, but so one of them, but I don't fully remember all the details, but we were working, I think, with a directive with isolated scopes. And I don't know in what we were using it, but we were supposed to show some data, to get some data out of that directive, and it was just not showing for the life in it. It just didn't want to show, and we were debugging, and I remember we were using Batarang, and the thing was just not attached to the scope, and we were looking, literally we took 4 hours, we were looping through all the scopes we had on the page to find the goddamn thing, and even up till today we don't know why it wasn't working. In the end we found some workaround, but it just didn't want to work. It was so frustrating. But then we also realized the power of Batarang. And then we were like, yeah, okay, we're gonna use this from now on. So that was one, and the second one was when we wrote our first service. We had no idea what had to go in there. I was watching Mishko's talk about services, and he had this, one of the first talks he gave, and it was about more things. And he had these, I will never forget, these Zen moments in between subjects. And then he had this part about services and kind of what has to go in there, and it was just so unclear for us what should go in there. And it was also in the beginning of Angular when documentation was kind of all you had, and that was not always very helpful. And yeah, there were no blogs or posts about that, so it was really a struggle for us to figure out what it is, what was all the difference between service and factory, which one we had to use, and what we should put in there, and how we should think of which logic goes where. It was really a joyride, that one. But yeah.
I think that's why Shai included it in his ng-wat talk. The service provider, factory, constant value. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but also just the moral of the stories. I always say that, yeah, if you have questions now, you have so many articles and everything. The community is so proactive about writing about their findings, and back then it was so little what we had. So it's something that we should definitely not take for granted.
That's kind of the scenario we find ourselves in with Angular 2 a little bit, but what's nice is we already there are tons of resources for Angular 2. It's not even released, which is it's going to be different. Because people like you, Carmen, giving talks at conferences.
Yeah, prepare very well, as you all heard.
Cool. Do we have any other horror stories?
I don't know. I was trying to think of these horror stories. I guess mine, it's not that bad, but I guess you could say, because Angular is in between opinionated, it's a little opinionated, but not totally opinionated. I don't know. One of the horror stories we have, we're building really, really fast, trying to get some products out the door, and just how easily your controllers can get bloated. And we had this one controller that was responsible for pulling from one API and updating to multiple different APIs, but the one object that was getting loaded onto the page that needed to get posted to these different APIs, each API had a different format, not just for the post body, but it needed to be camel case versus snake case. So and this just slowly bubbled up into just a huge gargantuan mess that needed to be refactored, and I don't know. That would be my horror story. So services, lots of services, and don't just start over time blowing up your controller.
Yeah, I think we've all refactored a huge controller before. That's no fun. Cool. So we've talked about some horror stories. There are still more the ng-if, ng-model with no dot scariness, and ng-controller, and all there are a lot of. Well, if you want to know more, go to ng-conf and see the ng-wat talk. There are a lot of weird things about Angular, but we still love it. And so I want to quickly talk about why we love Angular so much, even with all these horror stories that we've had, and then we can talk about Angular pro tips. So for me, why I love Angular anyway is yes, the Angular has kind of a DSL with the template syntax, and yes, there's definitely a learning curve after the first little bit. After your first ng show, and you're like, wow, that's so cool, and two-way binding. After that first little bit, there's this huge learning curve that you got to kind of figure out how does Angular treating things, and then Angular doesn't really enforce you writing your code in the way that you ought to. Without all of that, getting past all of that, Angular is an insanely powerful framework, and it can make you so productive. And then the community is so awesome. Your 1-800 number, as Aaron Frost would say, is a terrific community. And I think community is a big piece of why I love Angular so much. And then also, once you know it, then you're just so empowered to do some pretty awesome things. So that's one of the reasons I love Angular anyway.
Oh man, I was thinking I should talk before Carmen because I want to say that I love Angular because of the community, and she would probably say the same. And then you just did it before.
I took it away.
So yeah, that's why I love Angular, because I don't know. It's not that the community is big. It's that we're all just so friendly and welcoming, and well, we can do whatever we want, and people just jump in and help you, and it's cool. Yeah, I like that a lot.
On that note, I've noticed as a change in the JavaScript community in general that it seems like there's a lot more collaboration between Angular and React and Ember communities in general, which I think is a really, really awesome shift. Abstracting away all these libraries that we're building, I think it's a terrific idea to abstract away whatever framework you build it on, and so it can be used across frameworks. And then the framework itself, and I've noticed that happening in a couple libraries, but then the framework itself, the authors of the framework are collaborating with authors of other frameworks and libraries, and I just think that's way awesome. But yeah, anyway, that's just a thought that popped into my head. Does anybody else want to talk about why they still love Angular despite the horror stories?
I actually want to add to your idea, because that's precisely one of the things that during my talk at NGNL, I wanted to stress out very much, that I think us as developers in the end all have this main goal of moving the web forward. And then it doesn't matter if you're the author of one framework or the author of another framework, because in the end our goal should be the same. So then I find it, for me, it's so normal that people would just work with each other, because you have the same goal, and sure, you have different approaches, but everybody can learn from everybody. And I really like that Angular is doing this. I really like this, and because I'm wondering many times what makes the Angular community what it is. How come people are so generous with each other, or how come people are just so together? And everybody loves, everybody whom I've spoken with, everybody loves this community. So I was always wondering, what is it? And I really think that the core team does a very good job in kind of setting this tone. Also, what we saw at ngConf, the fact that they're reaching out to other teams and sort of setting up a common front, or I find that very inspiring, and I really think that sets up the tone. So yeah, kudos for that.
Cool.
So what are we gonna talk about on forums and Twitter if we don't have flame wars and stuff like that between Angular and the React community and stuff like that.
Yeah, we won't have anything to say except this is how you build something awesome. So, cool. Any other reasons we still love Angular despite horror stories? Actually, you know, one thing that I, just kind of going along with this collaboration theme, I guess, is I feel like Angular 2 is moving much more in the direction of let's utilize JavaScript as much as we can and make it so that when people build Angular applications, there are less Angular applications and more JavaScript applications. So, like, obviously, Angular's like a huge part of Angular is the view portion of your app. And so it's really hard to, like, one of the things that Angular does really well is abstract away the complexities of dealing with the DOM. And so, and I think that's what most frameworks do in general, like React, that's like their thing. So I feel like Angular 2 is kind of stepping away from your application a little bit to give you more freedom and like enable you to just write a JavaScript application, which is enabling this kind of collaboration between the frameworks, which I think is so cool. So,
yep. Also, yeah, the team behind Angular, the Google team, is really listening to what you can say. I was reading on Twitter 2 days ago a post from Brad when he was talking about new stuff and what was going on at meetings, and someone asked for I don't remember what it was, but he said you really need to add this to Angular 2 because oh yeah, I remember now. You need to add form support for file inputs because it's really something that we need. And Brad replied and he said, you know what? That's a good idea. I talked to the Material UI team, and we'll add this to the next meeting, and we'll talk about this. So yeah, they're listening, and if you want to ask for something, probably they just add it if they can, or maybe tell you what you can do to do that.
Yeah, props to the team. I'm just really impressed by those guys. That's cool. Cool. Any other thoughts before we get into pro tips? Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to pick and choose who goes first on this one. So be prepared. Olivier, why don't you go ahead and give us the pro tip first?
Well, I gave my pro tip at the at my last talk on NGR. Maybe I should try a new one. Oh, I know. Don't forget to add the unit test and use Protractor for end-to-end testing. It's really awesome. I think I've been using Protractor for test on JavaScript that is not even Angular code, and it's working well as well. So it's been saving my ass a few times now on my libs and at work. So don't forget to add test and try to convince your boss that it's not wasted time. In fact, you're just saving time for the future.
Cool. Yeah, and if anybody's interested in Protractor, we had an episode last week about Protractor, and well, not just Protractor, but unit tests and end-to-end. So, yeah, good tip. Aimee, why don't we hear your pro tip?
So my pro tip, we do testing and we use Protractor. So one thing when I got here, our end-to-end tests or Selenium tests were just like super slow. So we looked around at ways to mock out our backend. Now some people like maybe don't want to do this. It depends kind of what your approach is and what you're actually wanting to test. Whereas we were just wanting to test like kind of behavior on the page. So the backend, like hitting the backend, didn't actually matter. So we use a library to mock out all of our backend calls. It's called HTTP backend proxy. So it uses HTTP backend, but uses protractor to do this, so that you can actually just define, whenever you call an endpoint, you can define what you expect it to return. So you can functionally test all of your errors and just all of these different edge cases by just supplying whatever you want to come back in the response body. So my pro tip would be to look at that if it sounds like something you'd be interested in.
Cool. I'm looking at it right now. It looks pretty awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I'll go ahead and give mine really quick. So my pro tip is wrap your dependencies. So try to write as much JavaScript as possible and less framework or library specific code. So what I mean by that is I have a couple of examples. So I'm the author of Angular formerly, or not the author, I should make that distinction. I'm the maintainer of Angular formerly and the owner of the project now. But even I don't use the formally formed directive in my app except in one place. And that's in another directive called the AZ form, and that is my abstraction on top of my own library. And the reason that is a good idea, and it's not just Angular formally that I do this for. I do this for UI router, and it's not just directives either. Like I do this for AZ translate, or for the Angular translate. I use AZ translate instead for the filter and the service. The reason this is a good idea is if something comes around, for example, the new router that is better than what you're using currently, the upgrade path is going to be like a real pain in the rear for you. But if you wrap your dependencies, then like that API, you're only using that API in one place. And so if you decide, hey, I'm going to switch from UI router to the new router, that change will be a lot easier because you just have to go to one place where that API is being touched. And so making upgrades is a lot easier. And one person that's done this way beyond anything that anybody I've heard is Jeff Welpley, who we'll have on the show next week, has built an entire framework on top of Angular to do some pretty wild things that probably not a lot of us need to do. But anyway, he's basically abstracted Angular from his entire application code base, even the view layer, which is like wild. So yeah, we can ask him about that next week. But wrapping dependencies is just a good idea, not just in Angular, but in everything. But I can't stress that enough. Wrap your dependencies, even your own.
So by doing that, you can say that you have 100K lines of code in your application. So that's cool.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood.
Yeah, you said earlier that you had a big application with more than 100K lines of code. So maybe that helps. Oh,
well, yeah, so actually the application I'm working on right now is around 25K. So yeah, but even if you're going to build a small weekend app or a couple weeks or something, then yeah, maybe that really that'd be a waste of time to wrap dependencies in that kind of a situation. But if this is something that has business value and you're concerned with or you're interested in making sure that it's easy to upgrade things, you want to be able to maintain stuff, then yeah, wrap your dependencies. I think it's not all of them. I don't wrap all my dependencies. I think that would maybe not be silly, but if it's something that is going to touch a lot of my app, then I think at least think about the value of wrapping your dependencies. So that's my pro tip. Kara, why don't we go to you for a pro tip?
I guess I would say this is kind of a broader thing, but especially when you're first starting out with Angular, is to really get to know the directive lifecycle and how different directives will execute, or the order of their execution, depending on where they are in the DOM and their priority. It's just saved me so much trouble over time and so much debugging, being able to trace, especially with the component library, where you have things nested in other things and they're transcoding other things, to kind of understand, okay, well, this is going to compile before this, but this is going to link after this. So pro tip would be just get really familiar with that order. So. And
if there's a good resource out there, I would say your slides from ngconf were a really good illustration of what order directives run in. Is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good place to start. But even just let's say you have, I mean, the most simple thing is one directive. But then let's say you have two subsequent directives, or then you have two directives on the same element, and then you have a directive, and then a directive that's transcluded into that directive, and then a directive in the template of the first directive. What order those compile in and what order those link in. It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly, and it gets kind of confusing to think about. But if you really start to drill down into it, it just makes debugging really easy. So.
Cool, awesome. Carmen, what pro tip do you have for us?
I actually wanted to mention the testing, but Olivier was faster than me. But I still want to say it again. I think testing is super, super important. So write unit tests and end-to-end tests. It will save your ass, really. And don't do it once you've already developed a big part of your app, because that's going to be very painful. But really start with it, and that will also help you understand how Angular works. Yeah. So that really helped me. But I actually want to give another one, and that's learn web components, so that you can have a much easier life in understanding some basic concepts of Angular 2. So really learn web components. It has helped me personally tremendously when reading into Angular 2, the fact that I already knew stuff about web components, and then I was like, aha, that's why. So yeah, learn web components.
Great. Yeah, I was one of the guys who was postponing learning web components. I don't know if this is really going to be a thing, or if the community is going to adopt this, but yeah, after even playing around with Angular 2, you see, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of value there. So.
Yeah, I had to give a talk about them last year, and that's actually how I went into them, and now I'm really happy I did.
Cool. All right, so let's wrap up this really quick. We don't have any questions in the Q&A, so those of you viewers, if you wanted to ask a question, now is your opportunity, because we're going to move on. We're each going to answer the question as part of our closing of each show. We answer the question, what tip would you give a brand new developer? I'll go ahead and start. My tip would be find a meetup that is in your area and go. And even better, extra credit is speak. So my first talk that I ever gave was about a library that I wrote, but my second talk that I gave was at a Google developer group here in Utah, and I was just in a meetup, and they said, "Hey, who wants to speak next month?" And somebody said, "Well, I don't want to speak, but I'd like to hear something about karma," and I was thinking, I have heard the word karma before. I think it has to do with if you do bad things come. So I was like, sure, I'll talk about karma. So I didn't know anything about karma at that time, and it's a meetup. We're all learning together. And so in the next month, I learned about karma, and I gave a talk, and people found things valuable. So anyway, that's my tip to a new developer is speak at meetups and go to meetups. So Kara, why don't we go with you? Do you have a tip for a new developer?
Yeah. So I mean, are these new developers just at a company, or just people that are
whether it's new to Angular or just starting out developing? Lots of times we'll give a tip to a new developer, and an old-time developer will be like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, but
well, I was just gonna say, if you do, if you do have a mentor or a senior developer that I would definitely say ask for the most brutal code reviews that you can get. So that's kind of what I did when I started. I was just murder my pull requests, just slaughter them. Nothing is too nitpicky, nothing is too small. Just murder them. And I find that I got a lot more feedback. So if you have that luxury of someone that you can ask to look at your code, definitely do that. And then if you don't, I would just say join Twitter. I was really resistant to joining because I was in the initial Twitter wave like years ago, and people were just tweeting about Pop-Tarts and like walking my dog. But now there's just so many great people to follow. It's like a great way to find good content. So.
Cool, thanks. Olivier?
I would say try to find a good idea and work on your own at home on a special project with new technologies when you're trying to learn them, because just reading stuff online isn't enough. You have to try to learn things. Otherwise, you will just read it and forget it. So always keep a list of ideas of stuff that you would like to do, and just take one idea when you need to try something, and write an app on it. That's the best way that I know to learn new stuff.
Great. Carmen?
We had a teacher in school who used to say, "Don't try, just do." So I would say the same thing. Don't try to do it, just do it. And while doing it, if you fail, that's totally fine. Failure means that you will learn a lot of stuff. So fail, do and fail, and then you'll learn the most out of it. And never stop being curious, and never stop asking questions. That's very important. Ask as many questions as you can. Yeah, that would be it.
Thanks. And Aimee?
I guess my advice, I feel like some of it's already been covered, but probably there is like such a plethora of things to learn right now, especially in JavaScript, as we all know. So for somebody new, I would say try to pick a technology that you think is really exciting and focus on that for a given period of time, because it's easy to jump around to like the next big thing and kind of be like a master of none, and you're just like, jumping around from thing to thing to thing and never really learning something in depth. So that would be my advice. And then to build on the advice you said about joining meetups, listen to podcasts, because it will, slowly but surely, if you're new, I have found that I go to all these different things and I start like, I get one tidbit of information here and one tidbit of information there, and over time you start to put those puzzle pieces together.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, if everybody, I'm sure we all have some of the favorite podcasts that we'd like to listen to. If you could, on the Hangout event, just comment a couple links of the podcasts that you guys listen to, that'd be awesome. And then we actually do have a question somebody asked. This question is for Kara. Would you mind sharing a link to the UI component library? Thanks. So, Kara, if you could put that, probably just put it in the event as a comment. Then Jürgen Van Moor, or Jürgen Van Moor, I hope I said your name right, then he would appreciate it.
Okay, is that the open table one? Is that?
I think he's talking about the UI component library that you're working on. Maybe if you have multiple, probably just post them all.
I think it's still internal right now. We're working on getting it released, but as soon as we do, I'll definitely make sure it's public. So.
All right, so follow Kara for the win on Twitter to stay up to date with when that comes open source then. So, all right.
Just can't, your mic is doing weird noise, so.
Oh, sorry, is that better?
Not really.
Well, that's our show.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, sorry if my mic is going crazy. I'll jiggle this. But again, we have a show next week, April 28th, with Jeff Welpley, Patrick Stapleton, and Rob Wormold about Angular 2 Alpha. And follow us on Twitter and Google Plus to find out more. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
See you next week.
See you.
See you next week.